Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first here, satellite imagery of course, and low pressure out here over the Bering Sea back toward Shemya, sort of drifting northward. A lot of moisture spreading out ahead of the front with some gusty winds in across the Adak and Atka, and actually sort of a separate feature right through here up across the Pribilofs, and then just low clouds on up to the coastline down to the Alaska Peninsula with a few breaks here along the coast and even more so over the Yukon Delta northward there to eastern Norton Sound, the Lotto Hills, Caltag and those areas, and then another band of clouds and some moisture right along the Alaska Range where there were thunderstorms breaking out this afternoon, and then some scattered showers on up to the north to the Arctic coast. And then you start to break out again, get a little more sunshine here over the eastern interior areas. And those sunny areas rose into the 70s this afternoon. Look like most of the Copper River Basin today pretty nice with some sunshine, and some areas there rising into the lower 70s as well. And here across the southeast coast, nice to start with, but some moisture rolling in, cloudiness, and even some showers rolling into the coastline there, central coast, and the main front still back to the west here. There will be an increase in the clouds and chances of precipitation there throughout the evening and overnight tonight. Otherwise, you can see that coming up pretty rapidly, pretty good clip here this afternoon, at least to start with, and it sort of just parks off the coast for a little while there, while the thunderstorms also developing mainly, again, along the Alaska Range, and then over the eastern interior once again this afternoon. On the chart, scattered around again back through here, thunderstorms, just showers on back down toward the coastline there with scattered thunderstorms here across the central eastern interior. Also up here to the northeast, another batch of thunderstorms developed there over the Brooks Range, tracked right on out to Deadhorse. They reported a thunderstorm this afternoon, and that probably will continue into early this evening, and the showers should just mostly die out and move off the coast. Back to the west, more gradient there with southwest winds gusting as high as 50 miles per hour today at Cape Lisburne, and then winds maybe up to 35 miles an hour at Point Lay, with less wind onto the east and less wind down to the south there. But some of this moisture coming across brought some light precipitation to St. Lawrence Island, locally into the Seward Peninsula areas though, but quite light. Otherwise just cloudiness spreading down to the Yukon Delta coastline. High pressure, weak ridging here between the center out to the west and the stronger one there southeast of Kodiak Island, keeping it pretty light wind-wise there through the area, but increasing back from about Nikolsky on back to that weakening front as it pushes toward the Adak-Atka area. And for tonight, that feature should continue to weaken, but the southerly flow is going to carry rain and precipitation, heaviest here, Fox Islands, southward, and then more of a drizzle, light rain, fog condition there up across the Pribilof Islands heading up towards St. Matthew Island. Next front pushing northward here, developing with more rain and increasing wind across the central Aleutians once again, with the main low center back towards Shemya and Attu. Otherwise, no change here, low clouds and fog, pretty extensive from the Bering Strait under a ridge of high pressure there, right along the west coast there, down across Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula. So IFR possible anywhere along the coast and offshore there, right up to the Bering Strait. Stays quite windy here for the western Arctic coast, back down across the Chukchi Sea into around the Bering Strait area, with upslope winds there, southwest winds on the Brooks Range. So look for some showers to develop there tonight, and it stays windy there on the western Arctic coast. Gale warnings out tonight and tomorrow there. lighter winds to the east, and downsloping off southwest wind should push some VFR conditions probably all the way out to the coastline during the night tonight, with mostly clear skies here on the lee side of the Brooks Range, down into the Koyukuk Valley, southwest here. Again, diminishing showers down across the Alaska Range, with the thunderstorms here over the northern Alaska Range, all in a winding down mode, but probably in some cases persisting well into the night tonight. It's pretty widespread shower activity continuing there over the eastern interior and 40-mile country, drying out down across the Copper River Basin. Nothing expected along the North Gulf Coast except for some clouds, and this front continues to increase the chance of rain there across the Panhandle, mainly coastal areas tonight. More of a showery condition, scattering out toward the border and to the east. And that doesn't move a whole lot by tomorrow afternoon. Still a remnant or a frontal system here off the coast, kind of just surges of moisture rolling in. See showers or breaking up into showers as they pass inland there, and then a little bit of a break here across the southeast coast. So could see some areas of clearing over the inland areas. Chance of rain holds over holds along the coast through tomorrow, with small craft advisory winds in advance of that, 25 knots, except on the south coast, only looking at 20 knots, but should pick up a breeze there out of the southeast or clearance straight up to around 20 knots, with less wind along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, south central Alaska. Trough edging southeastward again, responsible for the convection today, coming a little bit farther south tomorrow, right along the Alaska Range. So possibly northern Susitna Valley, in across the Copper River Basin, back up into the interior there. It's pretty widespread still on the north side of the Alaska Range in the Tanana Valley. Pretty good convection breaking out once again tomorrow. It should be dry, no more thunderstorms or showers for the Brooks Range on out to the eastern Arctic coast. The southwest flow ahead of this front and the warm push to the northeast makes for a very nice sunny warm day there, north side of the mountains, back down to the Brooks Range. And that's mostly sunny condition. It'll extend right down to the across the western interior, and then back in around south central Alaska, ridging back here to the west. Dry northwest flow here. So it should be a mostly sunny day for Kodiak Island, definitely southern Cook Inlet. Dry conditions along the peninsula there, Bristol Bay. And rain continues, rain, fog, drizzle, IFR, winds on the increase for the Pribilofs, back down to the Fox Islands. Increasing southerly winds, southeasterly winds there, possibly gusting as high as 40, maybe 45 miles an hour, but much lighter behind the front. Distinct lack of gradient out there, turning northwest at about 20 towards Chimianatu, with maybe a little bit of sunshine. Otherwise, for Sunday, that front advances eastward here. A good westerly flow behind it, pushing it right into the western Alaska Peninsula. And I believe small craft advisory winds now instead of the gales out for the peninsula, but definitely rain rolling into that area, and rain encroaching on the southwest coast, possibly reaching the coastline, the outer coastline like Nunivak Island down to Cape Neuenam by the late afternoon on Sunday. Inland areas mostly sunny throughout the day, pretty mild temperatures northward there, high pressure over the Kobuk Valley, so mostly sunny skies there eastward into the Yukon Flats, Brooks Range area, and a trough lying along the western and central Arctic coast. That'll keep a chance of rain and fog in the area, but winds much lighter up here now, really dropping off actually probably Saturday night later, and then by Sunday afternoon, definitely a lot lighter wind-wise here down into the Chukchi Sea. And for the southeast coast, trough coming southeastward here puts thunderstorms mostly in Canada, with some pretty good showers though coming into the central southeast coast there, trailing off to the southwest with dry conditions, maybe a few breaks down toward Dixon Entrance, drier back to the northwest here, Elfin Cove over to Yakutat, maybe some clearing there for Prince William Sound. This trough now coming southward, so it looks like pretty convective for the Copper River Basin south of the Alaska Range, with some thunderstorms possibly developing into the Madanuska Valley, along the Talkeetnas, maybe even down to the Chugach Mountains areas there just east of Anchorage on Sunday afternoon. Otherwise, southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula on down, and even Seward looking pretty good, just variably cloudy skies. Mostly sunny there. Kodiak Island, best conditions on the east side to Fognak Island. Rain spreading northeast, as I mentioned, for the Alaska Peninsula. Mostly sunny, light winds across the western interior. Temperatures for the southeast coast this afternoon, not too bad. Some areas rising toward the mid-60s there, with Petersburg at 60, or at Wrangell 64 degrees. Same thing at Juneau at the International Airport, 59 Sitka, and Klock 62 degrees, and at 57. And North Gulf Coast, mid to upper 50s through this area. Seward at 58 degrees. That same temperature matched at Valdez. McCarthy 72 degrees this afternoon and sunshine. About the same there at Northway. Mid to upper 60s, Tanana Valley, just 57 over at Eagle, and then back up to 74 there for Fort Yukon. Lower 60s, Koyukuk Valley, and also lower 60s now north side of the Brooks Range there, with Umiat Airfield up to 62. Otherwise, 40s right along the coastline, rising into the 50s, just a mile or two inland. Cold spot 39, Point Hope, otherwise in the 40s across the Seward Peninsula. 60s southwest interior, with Marshall at 66 degrees today, otherwise 50s along the coast. 50 St. Paul, St. George, Alaska Peninsula, upper 50s toward King Salmon, upper 40s for the Aleutians. Lows for tonight, warmest here, Tanana Valley, up across the Yukon there with the upper Yukon area, Yukon Flats, mid 50s, 30s, upper 30s, central western Arctic coast. Everyone else in the 40s or 40s to lower 50s. Highs for tomorrow, nice 70s again. Mid to possibly upper, like today Chuck Yitzhak was up to 78. Might see that again tomorrow, into the low 70s and near 70, but dropping into the 60s here as you head down toward northeast Bristol Bay. 60s for the Panhandle, maybe a 70-degree reading in the Susitna Valley tomorrow, otherwise 40s and 50s out west. Flying weather, IFR here off the southeast coast yet, still not marginal VFR tonight. Good VFR the interior, IFR coming eastward of that front toward the Pribilofs into the Fox Islands. Tomorrow kind of breaks up. There's a front weakens with the main area back up to the north. The Arctic coast, again, the east side looking really good tomorrow. North slope areas, lower conditions with the closer to the front back to the west. IFR well south in the North Gulf Coast, edging in toward the Panhandle. And looking at the passes, Anatuvik, Madigan, both good VFR again tomorrow, probably Sunday as well. And for the Lake Clark, Merrill, and Rainy, all VFR, but windy, VFR becoming marginal as clouds build convection. Otherwise, Isabel, VFR, Montesta, the same as windy there. It looks like VFR, and then throughout the afternoon possibly becoming marginal with the risk of some thunderstorms. And Tanita, though, VFR. Portage, marginal VFR, lowest conditions east side. Chilkoot and White, VFR becoming marginal throughout the day. And for the freezing levels, about 8,000 feet here over the northern Panhandle, rising to 12,000 just south of the Queen Charlottes. 6,000 feet on the west coast toward 10,000 feet over the Northwest Territories, and then a tighter gradient, thermal gradient out here over the Southwest Bering and Aleutians. For icing, pretty good area here, possibly occasional moderate, widespread moderate, right through the central Aleutians into the southern Bering tomorrow, slipping eastward, so that'll spread some icing threats into the eastern Aleutians, which probably is already there now and will continue with that stationary boundary right up to the Pribilofs. 8,000 feet and up here for the northern Panhandle areas, maybe the eastern interior, mixed icing types there. Add in the jet stream, upper trough Gulf of Alaska, another flow to the north, ridging in these Aleutians. And stronger ridging here, more notable at 9 and 3,000 feet, southeast 25 off the Panhandle, and southwesterlies up to 50 knots here from the Chuck CC up along the Arctic coast and to the north, lighter to the east, lighter to the southeast, and pretty good breeze right through the Bering Strait here in the northern Bering Sea, up to 35 knots ahead of that front as you approach the eastern Aleutians. And then at 3,000 feet, about the same pattern here, ridging through here into Bristol Bay, into the central interior. Very light winds across the southeast part of the state, even the Panhandle, southeast 20-25, mostly off the coast. Strongest winds up to 55 knots there along the western Arctic coastal areas. 45 knots here right into the western mountains there of the Brooks Range. And for turbulence, occasional moderate chop for sure from the Bering Strait all along the west coast, Kivalina right up to possibly Wainwright, and probably should have that extended a little bit farther to the east there for the downslope areas of the western Brooks Range. Otherwise, light to isolated moderate becomes moderate again for the central Aleutians to the western Alaska Peninsula. False Pass maybe as far east as Cold Bay. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
recent years, the GPS receiver has been one of the most useful tools for professional pilots, drivers, and seafarers. These receivers use geospatial data to identify geographic locations and characteristics of natural and man-made features on the Earth.
These receivers are also being used by hikers, golfers, and fishermen for recreation purposes. However, many people who use this technology still don't know exactly how it works.
Our Johnny Alonso finds out how this complex system helps keep many of us on track and on schedule.
Trying to figure out where you are and where you're going has always been a challenge. Navigation and positioning are crucial to so many activities, and yet the process has not always been easy. Thankfully, the days of navigating by celestial means or landmarks are long gone since the introduction of GPS, or the Global Positioning System. So what is GPS? For some answers, I spoke with Dr. Kevin Dutton at NASA Langley to find out how it works.
GPS stands for the Global Positioning System, and like the name suggests, it's a system to find your location anywhere on the Earth or near the Earth's surface. And the way it does that is by using radio frequency broadcasts from orbiting satellites.
Can you tell me why GPS was originally developed?
It was developed by the Defense Department to meet all of their navigational needs. For example, aircraft and ships at sea. And now even individual soldiers carry little receivers like this in the field to find out where they are.
The Global Positioning System consists of a constellation of 24 satellites and their ground stations working together. GPS uses these man-made stars as reference points to calculate positions accurate to a matter of meters, and in some cases centimeters. As long as you have a GPS receiver and a clear view of the sky and a map, you'll never be lost again. Today, GPS is finding its way into cars, boats, planes, construction equipment, farm machinery, even laptop computers. So how does the system work?
Let's say you're backpacking and you have a receiver with you. You're going to turn on that receiver. Now the GPS satellites are constantly broadcasting a signal, all 24 of them, but above you at any one time there's only 12 available, and then the other 12 are on the other side of the Earth.
Okay.
So your receiver is going to listen and try to find at least 4 of these satellites directly above you, and then it's going to determine a range to each satellite, and it's going to use those ranges and the known locations of the satellites, and it's going to do some mathematical calculations and a process called trilateration, and it's going to figure out where that GPS receiver is. That'll also give you altitude, and it'll give you speed and the direction that you're traveling in.
A standard GPS receiver will not only place you on a map at any particular location, but will also trace your path across a map as you move. If you leave your receiver on, it can stay in constant communication with GPS satellites to see how your location is changing. With this information and its built-in clock, the receiver can give you several pieces of valuable information like how far you've traveled, how long you've been traveling, your current speed and your average speed. Also, the estimated time of arrival at your destination if you maintain your current speed.
There's a lot of uses that they hadn't really thought about when they developed the system. For example, later on it was discovered that if you put multiple antennas on a vehicle, like an aircraft for instance, you could actually get attitude. You could figure out its orientation and whether it was rolling or pitching or yawing. Other things that they didn't realize they could really do were, for instance, seismologists use it for earthquake detection and to find out when tectonic plates are actually shifting apart. It's that good.
Something else.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Sure. So that's how it works. So the next time you want to know where you are or where you're going, don't reach for a map. Reach for your GPS. Now, which button is it here to press for a date for tonight's gathering?
That's all for this edition of NASA's Destination Tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steele McGonigal.
And I'm Kara O'Brien. For all of us here at NASA, we'll see you next time.
Their job is search and rescue. But until the early 1980s, these crews often had little to go on. This changed when locator beacons became mandatory on small boats and planes. In an emergency, the beacons emit a signal that is picked up by a series of satellites and relayed to search and rescue forces. This NASA-initiated effort has saved more than 3,000 lives over the past 10 years. But in situations where a locator beacon doesn't activate, rescue teams are again forced to cover sometimes thousands of miles, hoping to spot the missing craft before it's too late.
Unable to identify any objects below but definite broken trees.
Looking for a way to increase the odds of success in these beaconless searches, researchers from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center made their way into an isolated, heavily forested area called Crystal Springs Watershed near San Francisco. As part of an ongoing experiment, their mission was to drop off a plane wreck. This particular wreckage was positioned just down a dirt road from another which had been hauled in some time ago. Both were intentionally located below a heavy canopy of trees to see if a system called Synthetic Aperture Radar, or SAR, aboard a DC-8 could detect the wrecks through the foliage. The goal was to evaluate whether this special type of radar, traditionally used in geographic and forestry studies, might also be a useful tool for search and rescue crews in crises where no locator beacon information is available, or where bad weather or trees make it impossible to see a downed plane from the air. Upon completion of a flight, the images produced by the SAR are transferred to NASA Goddard for final processing and analysis. The bright spots are things on the ground that could be the target wrecks. By filtering out features known to be part of the everyday landscape, such as buildings or towers, the location of each wreck is isolated. Colonel Jim Bigelow heads up the Civil Air Patrol search and rescue operations in the Pacific region.
We have lost 35 of our own rescue people since 1980 looking for the missing airplanes. So by getting to the airplanes faster and using the synthetic aperture radar on these difficult searches, not only will the people that are in the airplanes be saved, but we will reduce our own losses and people that are killed in this effort.
Welcome back. Looking at the forecast here, with that front coming up to the coastline, we've got south to southeast winds at 25, so small craft advisories for most of the coastline, turning east on the north end, but under small crafts down on the south side, southeast up to 20 for Clarence Strait, much lighter through Stevens Passage and Frederick Sound, and then just south 15 for northern Lynn Canal. They'll pick up a little bit on Sunday there with a touch more gradient, 20 in the afternoon, 4-foot seas. Otherwise pretty light and southeasterly for the remainder of the inside waters there down to Dixon Entrance. South winds coming down to 15 there for the southern coast, and then pretty light even up to the north down to 10 knots there with 7-foot seas. And for the Prince William Sound tomorrow, variable to north at about 10, northeast 20 for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and then swinging around to the northwest at 15 by the time you get to the Barrens. Light variable winds, Shelikof Strait right up through Cook Inlet tomorrow, and north 20 there on the east side of Kodiak. And then that turns southwest at 20 knots, both here on the east side and through Shelikof Strait to westerly 20 Kachemak Bay. Otherwise, west winds at 15 for the North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands, and variable to west at about 10 for Prince William Sound, and light southwest breeze for Cook Inlet. Bristol Bay, southwest 15 tomorrow. Small craft advisories here, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast 25. And for Sunday, even stronger winds with that front rolling in from the west to east. So southeast 30 knots, higher gusts here out of the bays on the north side. Small craft advisories advancing northeastward, even towards Sitkinak. Otherwise, Bristol Bay southeast 20. The Aleutians tomorrow ahead of the front, all 30-knot winds right to the Fox Islands. Seas 7 to 11 feet. Lighter winds back to the west. And on Sunday, southwest winds 25 knots for the most part. Seas 7 to 13 feet. Southerlies here still carrying some gales there, north side of Unalaska Island. And then for the southwest coast, southerlies 15 to 20 right up to St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories, northern Bering Sea here, St. Matthew Island westward, all the way down to the Pribilof, so they pick up to about 30 knots tomorrow. And then that holds through Sunday with 30 knots southeasterly, seas up to 11 feet here into the northern Bering Sea, and advance eastward, winds up to 30 knots now for the southwest coast across Nunivak Island, lighter for St. Lawrence. And gales here for the coast from the central coast all the way down to Cape Thompson. Southerlies 35, strongest winds 40 knots out of the southwest on the west side, lighter as you head east. And for the Sunday outlook, lighter everywhere now, down to 20 knots. Southerlies up to from Wales to Cape Thompson, and then southwest turning westerly at about 20 knots, and west-southwest 15 to 20 knots there, eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight, this front creeping in toward the Panhandle, increasing rain going on right now, clouds and rain across the area, and thunderstorms will start winding down here, especially along the Alaska Range into the eastern Tanana Valley. Back along the western range, changing to just showers or ending altogether. Maybe some low clouds and fog, possibly southern Cook Inlet, maybe nothing too extensive into Prince William Sound. Otherwise, pretty fair over the interior. A trough, rain, eastern Aleutians up to the Pribilofs, more rain and wind out to the west. Advancing eastward, you can see more gradient, so more wind tomorrow. Winds increasing in Fox Islands up to the Pribilofs, back to the frontal system there, and then diminishing behind it. Another batch of thunderstorms here, and pretty good convection from the Alaska Range northward. Some of this starting to slip southward. This front hanging off the coast tomorrow, keeping those small craft advisories going. And then on Sunday, pretty much washes out. There's a trough left behind now. Another trough pushes thunderstorms farther to the south. Rain and wind for the Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.